Hi, this is Rick Beyer, and I want to welcome a classmate and former WDCR colleague Peter Hirshberg to D78 Conversations. And this is the first of what I hope will be a series of discussions with classmates, or maybe it'll be the only one, Peter. I don't know. You could be the once and only guest.
We're pioneering something, and it's either going to be fine or it's going to be so bad no one will talk about it. So we're doing great.
Yes, so perfect. I think that's exactly what we're we're aiming for. And I'm in Chicago, where we have 3 feet of snow on the ground, and you're out there in San Francisco, where you probably don't have as much.
We're so far, we won't be the safest places in the nation because there's no snow. We haven't lost our gas or oil. We're still waiting for the earthquake. We are losing a lot of people because
Yeah.
folks are leaving the Bay Area.
Well, listen, let's get to the heart of what we want to talk about today. It's a little bit about you, Peter. You serve as an innovation advisor to cities and companies. You're the founder of Maker City. You are a real advocate of the maker movement. You've worked for Apple. You've been involved in many fascinating tech adventures. It's a long list. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is what you've been doing during this pandemic. Your pandemic pastime. You've started a live cast, and it's called Quarantine.
That's
Tell
right.
us about Quarantine.
Okay, so we're coming up on about 1 year. We're kind of 65 or 70 episodes or so. Look, when the lockdown started, it was really lonely. You weren't out there seeing people. Ideas felt locked down, and yet at the same time there was a burst of innovation. People were connecting and trying to think, how do we solve problems here? People were connecting on PPPs and how do we use the media better? And kind of all of my activist friends were these sinews are growing out, connections are being made. We have to go and solve this thing. So I noticed that just under the surface there was a lot of innovation that was actually going on, even if the news reports was the governor didn't have PPPs, the president didn't want him to have them, and nobody knew about a vaccine. So the national news was like it was a disaster. But if you're sitting here in the innovation community in San Francisco, suddenly all the VCs were starting to think about, how do you build cities if people are leaving and what happens next? And the synthetic biology people were like, wow, this is our moment. So my friend Mickey McManus and Mickey used to be an Autodesk fellow, wrote a book called Trillions on the Internet of Things. Now he's in charge of a lot of the deep tech work that Boston Consulting Group does. So what's coming next with AI and synthetic biology and stuff? We thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have an excuse to talk to the most interesting people in the world once or twice a week about innovation that was going on under the surface? So that's why I created this thing. Um, I had a second group of friends who created something called Quarantine, and that was the group that was responsible for the Stay Home Save Lives campaign. So we worked a lot with Facebook and people to get that out over social media. We did a book on how do you prepare for death and grieving in the middle of all this, and a book and a set of
Mm.
resources came out of it. And in the course of it, I said I'd take on the communications piece of this. So that's really where it's come from. Over the course of the year, it's become almost a scrapbook of what our thinking was like as we went through this. I'll give you an example. Very early on, we had our fellow Dartmouth alum, Susan Denser, who I think was a class ahead of us and has spent years at PBS as their top healthcare person. She now does a lot of work on telemedicine, remote medicine. We had her and Marco Annunziato, former chief economist for GE, and this might have been in March. And they had one of the first conversations on opening up the economy and its effects versus the importance of keeping everybody at home, right? Marco's kind of a conservative economist. It's like it's not going to work out well, and if we keep the right people at home, and Susan's like, no, this is public health, right? So we had a kind of very early version of that. Um, as work was going on early in the year on vaccines, and we're using these new RNA methods, we had Steve Jurvetson, one of the top VCs, first money in Tesla, SpaceX, and Hotmail, together with another guy who kind of is a top synthetic biologist, and we were looking at how can manufacturing start to change in all this. So the idea has been to look at how innovation is changing. We spent a lot of time looking at how the media was changing, right? In real time, do you remember people were on Zoom all the times? How do you have Zoom parties? Is that even possible? So we had a number of artists who were working in that and people who were pioneering new forms. Andrew McLuhan, Marshall McLuhan's grandson,
Mm.
came on. because if you want to understand how media is changing in real time, it's like the Annie Hall thing. You have to go grab Marshall McLuhan. So,
So you have to grab his grandson now.
yeah.
And Peter, I popped this up a moment ago, but this is your. Oh, I just got rid of you by accident. Still working on the technology here. This is your website for Quarantine.
If you go
With
to
it,
quarantine.today,
yeah,
um,
and you've got, like, we're recording this on February 19th. You've got a show this afternoon. Is that right? Today's the 19th, isn't
that's
it?
right. Right.
Okay.
We have a show this afternoon. One of our shows on science is coming up this afternoon.
And
Uh,
are they? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, are they all archived someplace? So if
Yeah,
somebody said, "Wow, that sounds interesting. Where have I been for the last year?" I can
absolutely.
go to your website and see them.
Let's go back to that last screen you have.
Sure.
Now,
Okay.
if you click on the little YouTube button, okay, see on the left, the red one?
Yeah, I'm
That's
working on
the
it.
archive at YouTube, right? So that'll take you to all 50 or 60 shows that would be archived over at YouTube. And then if you click on the link that says videos, so that's today's show, Grand Challenges at the Center of Health, Design, and Society. So this is with kind of top health innovators thinking through where we're going. But there's a button up there that says videos, and then you can look at all the videos.
Yeah, I'm gonna just click back out of it because
Just
clearly
click back out.
I'm not doing a great job scrolling, but people get the
So
idea.
basically, there's a button. The archives show up at YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn. So that's how you find the archives.
Okay, and it's live on those too, right? It's live on Facebook, and LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube, right?
It's streamed live. We're using this tool. We're using StreamYard.
Right, right.
It's great to do it live because there's an energy there. There's dialogue with the audience. People are chatting stuff in.
Well, you and I were both at Dartmouth. This is kind of a funny thing. So we were both at WDCR, loved doing live radio, and kind of parallel to you, as some people know, I've been doing a weekly live cast, a history live cast, and I laughed when you said it's a great excuse to talk to interesting people. That's the best part about it. Look, we can get, fabulous history authors as guests, but it's been a lot of fun for me, and maybe it has for you too, to come back to live broadcasting.
Right. The tools are amazing these days. And, I have to tell you a story. When I was a kid before Dartmouth, I had an illegal radio station in my bedroom. So, like, I would have tape recorders and they would listen to me. And then I went to Dartmouth and we had Dartmouth Broadcasting. And then I went off to Apple and I was running marketing for many years. And those were the dark years because it was before podcasting. So you were only allowed to have an audience if you worked for Paul Gigot or someplace that had a media company, right? And then and then at some point at Apple, we were inventing QuickTime, and podcasting came out, and it was like, oh, you could have an audience again, right? And so, and now we live in a world where kind of there's far more people making content than people who actually consume it.
Right, right. There's more of us making it than there are people watching it. But it's great fun, and it's great to come back in that full circle and maybe use some of those skills that we built when we were failing to attend class, but instead being involved in all sorts of
Look,
broadcasting.
it's also worth pointing out everything else that's gone with this and social media. So I was chairman of a company called Technorati. It was the first search engine for social media. So now we're going back to 2002. We were so optimistic that we were democratizing media, that everyone could have a voice, that things were opened up. And early on, we saw things that bothered us. People were trolling. They were slut shaming. We saw that the left and the right appeared to be merging, just talking to each other, right? And now we sit at this moment where this is literally the day that Australia is considering legislation that would pull the news off of Facebook. The United States, hauled the heads of Robinhood up because you basically cross social media with stock trading for kids, and you end up with a crazy situation here.
Yeah.
So now that this stuff is so democratic, we're dealing with some amazing governance issues. So Rick, I want to congratulate you on using this medium responsibly.
Well, trying to at least. And congratulations to you on Quarantine. Is it? There's a rumor that the name might be changing, but maybe that's not public yet.
Oh, we'll talk about that. Look. When we created this thing, we were really interested in innovation in the arts, in deep tech, and in activism, and we wanted to connect those people up. At some point, from a branding point of view, the name Quarantine gets old because we may not be in quarantine.
Cross
Our
our
real
fingers.
interest is on where innovation is headed, and and this kind of sense that there's a lot of possibility here. We did a show a couple weeks ago, right after President Biden announced his science advisor. The president harkened back to Vannevar Bush, Roosevelt's science advisor, who famously wrote the book Endless Frontier. It was the end of World War II. Science had done radar, the atomic bomb, the proximity fuse. It had won the war. And the head of science, Bush, was like, everyone thinks science is about blowing people up. We need a post war vision where we'll create a national science foundation, we'll create a health establishment, and we'll leap forward. So his report was called Endless Frontier. And we think that's a pretty good name for a show. Because if
Oh
there was
yeah.
an endless frontier of science back in 45, imagine today with synthetic biology, augmented reality, AI, nanotechnology, all of those things. And when you bring those together, you have the stuff out of which you can build a world that can grow sustainably, right? That is not extractive but is regenerative. So there's a whole set of things that I think aren't as appreciative because America's in this boohoo moment about politics and climate and wealth and cities. And a lot of the work that I do day to day is like all the stuff that's going to figure out ways to go take that on. So that's kind of what the show is going to become, Endless Frontier. Um, and I'll give you a great example. We had Mayor Bill Peduto on and Mayor Whaley from Dayton. Together, 8 mayors came up with a Marshall Plan for the Upper Midwest. They said, look, we were between Appalachia and the Ohio Valley, we were the energy forge of the nation and the manufacturing forge. And now we're disinvested in, and there's a lot of contentiousness about fossil fuels and stuff. Mayor Peduto said, we'll lose 100,000 jobs to fracking if we do nothing. Why don't we become the clean energy forge for America, the place where you do hydrogen fuels and you do wind and you put the distribution in? That could create net 500,000 jobs. That's a big idea, almost a New Deal scale idea. It's a sense of endless frontier, and that our new American frontier is us, our cities again. So that's much of the theme that we'll be looking into.
Well,
And
it's I've checked out Quarantine. It's great, and I think it'll also be great as Endless Frontier. And Peter Hirshberg, it is great to talk to you and to see you again, and keep going with all this stuff, man.
And Rick, if there are people in our class that are doing, sitting out there at the frontier of economics, of healthcare, of technology, of change, they're doing interesting things. Uh, Drop me a note at it could just be at peter@makercity.com. Peter@makercity.com, because we'd love to talk to you, because this way we can get caught up with our friends who are probably out there changing the world, Rick.
I hope so. Thanks so much, Peter. You take care.